This is going to be a really quick session on telephony in CRM. And we also have a guest speaker, a really interesting person who's going to give you some productivity hacks and not bore you about just products and integrations, and more interesting updates on how Jive Telephony and Zoho CRM work together. So we ran a huge survey with a lot of our existing Zoho CRM users. And one thing we figured out was 87% of all the customer interaction happens over telephone, a number that we were like surprised because 87% of all their customer interaction still happens on telephone. And more customers today, I'm pretty sure, they expect customized experiences. So don't want you take you to ask questions like, hey, who are you? Where are you calling from? What is the order status? Because when you receive a call and when it comes into your CRM system, they want you to greet them by the name, and that's how you would like it to be, right? So more and more personal experiences means you need to know the context of the call, who's calling, who was the last rep who was assigned to the ticket, and whatnot. And most importantly, the way the current telephony system works is we take notes of most of the calls, and when we're trying to feed them into the CRM system, most of the context is lost because you're on the phone, you're on the notepad, and there is no connectivity to what you're trying to do. What really helps is the sales managers trying to understand how productive my team is, or my sales numbers going up, sales number going down. They don't have a clue of what is actually happening, or people picking up the calls, how many calls are we missing, what's the whole duration. There's so many numbers that are missing between what happens in a telephone conversation to what goes into a CRM to what is generated as a report end of the day. So I quickly went through the current approach as how it's happening. And what we are trying to make you understand through the integrated approach is when you have your telephone systems integrated with CRM, all the calls are logged automatically, including the notes that you take, including the time that is spent on each call. And all this data are accessed by the sales managers to figure out how productive our team have been in closing deals, in missing calls. So you get a lot of statistics that helps you, your sales team, and the whole productivity and improving sales. So quick recap on the features that today that we support with the major telephony providers. We have contextual click to call, a pop-up that shows up information about your customer, about what deal that you're working on. And we also log every single calls, which means you don't have to manually go and submit all this information into the CRM. Everything is automatically logged. And your notification area gives you a lot of insights on where the call came, when the call came, and who was assigned to the call. So one important thing, today we have Kyoki Andres, the Vice President of Jive Telephony. Rather than me giving you a demo of how the telephony actually works inside CRM, so we thought we would have him present the demo and also give you a lot of productivity hacks that you could take away with. So a round of applause for Kyoki.
All right, so let's take a look at Jive plus Zoho. I am the luckiest man in high tech. I have had so many things that I've got to do in high tech, and people are like, how did you get to do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I came along at the right time. And today, this is one of those things. Jive getting to work with Zoho. It's a great partnership. I'll tell you more about it in a minute. But first, I'm going to talk about telephony. This is a picture of what? Does anybody know? It's the first telephone. It is the very first one. There's two things. One, how do you talk or communicate with somebody who's far away so you don't have to go through all the trouble to get together? And two, how do you communicate with somebody who's not available at the same time you are? So that's a lot about what written communication is. Well, after the telephone solved the problem of not having to be co-located, in the next 130 years, we did all kinds of crazy things with telephone systems. First, we came up with this great idea. What if people had their own numbers? Did you know people didn't have their own numbers at the beginning? That was an innovation. Well, we innovated like crazy. And then, about 10 years ago, we started moving telephone systems actively to the internet and putting them in the cloud. And in the last 12 years, we have taken every innovation that's been done over the last 130 years and put them in the cloud. And that's what Jive has done. We are the leader in internet platform for telephony systems. One of the things that's amazing about Jive is how easy it is to make your small business appear like a big business. One of the ways that your telephone system looks like a big business is what happens when people call you. Now, normally, somebody calls you on your cell phone, and you're like, hey, what's up? Well, sometimes that's really cool if they're your friends. But when they are maybe a prospective new customer, and they dial the phone, which happens to come to your cell phone or maybe a desk phone, and you say, hey, hello? Hello? You start to not look as professional. Well, when you're a small business, it's hard to create that feeling. But with the Jive telephone system, we can create what's called a dial plan in about 5 minutes that makes incoming calls from customers feel super professional. You can do the, choose one, choose two. You can send people to support. You can check to see if it's a fax on the way in. You can reroute the call based off of the customer. There's all kinds of stuff that you can set up, and we do it really simply. Now, I was going to run through and create one of these for you. Why would Zoho want to partner with Jive? Because our partnership is unique in that we are actually doing something we call co-development. The Jive team, I have developers who work for me, are working with Zoho developers to create something that's super integrated. Well, it all has to do with something called flow. Here's why flow is super important. What flow means is getting into kind of that focused state where you're just nailing tasks. You ever been in that state? Well, according to research, you're 5 times more productive when you are in a state of flow than when you are just at a surface level of doing a task. 5 times more productive. And you're happier. The more often you get into that state where you're in your rhythm and just nailing stuff, you are a happier person. And you're more creative. Your problem solving goes up, and your ability to deal with stress increases. All of those things happen. You can get major improvements in productivity by being in flow. Well, what kills flow? Interruptions. Interruptions are the biggest killer of flow. How long does it take if you're in flow and you get interrupted to be back in flow? It's 23 minutes on average. And if you're doing a highly technical task, it can be up to 45 minutes. Because there's a thing called memory load. When you are doing a complex task, you load all this stuff into your memory, into your mind, and you kind of organize it. And then when you get interrupted, you flush your memory, and you ever notice it, you go back and you're like, okay, where was I? And you start reconstructing it. And so it can take 45 minutes to get back in groove. Well, a person who is constantly interrupted and doesn't get to often be in a state of flow, they have the same physical symptoms as somebody who is suffering sleep deprivation. And you get unhappy, and there's this other thing of you avoiding the most valuable tasks. Would you say that in general, the most valuable tasks that you complete are the simple ones or the ones that take a lot of your brain power? The hard ones is where we create value generally. But people love to check things off. We get a little dopamine hit every time we finish a task. So we want to be in flow, but we also want to finish tasks. If you know you're going to be interrupted, they've modeled this with people. People who anticipate being interrupted will choose to work on tasks that they believe they will be able to finish before they are interrupted. And so in big projects, you ever seen this happen where it looks like most of the project's mostly done, and then we hit this wall where nothing gets finished? It's because we've pushed off all the complicated tasks. We continue to interrupt the people, and then they don't have any way to finish it. This is what's cool about Zoho. Zoho is built for flow. Because every time you change a context, you interrupt yourself. But the more your working environment can be consistent, the less you interrupt yourself and the more you can get done. Well, partnering with Jive extends Zoho's flow into the phone, because one of our biggest interrupters is the phone. And when you can make it now so that somebody contacts you and you stay in your Zoho workspace, you stay more productive. And so that's what we've done with Jive and Zoho and working together. So I ask you this question: how important is customer opinion to you when you're making a purchase? How important are the reviews and opinions of others to you? Who here that would rate reviews as an important factor in your decision-making process? Today, People trust reviews on average more than they trust magazine articles, editors, etc. Peer reviews are the biggest factor in influencing people's beliefs. So how does Jive stack up compared to the other leaders in the industry? Recently, Gartner Group went through and they reviewed all the reviews on the web and calculated the response of customers to Jive compared to all of the other major players in the industry. And you can see that in every category, we were either tied for first or the highest. And the one we're most proud of is that our Net Promoter Score, which is the most common indicator, is at least double. And I'll tell you that number 16 is the largest company in the industry. So we're pretty proud of that and just wanted to throw that out to you. So let's take a look here. Here's a Zoho instance, and let's see how well the integration works. What you can see here is Zoho CRM. It's kind of a bad day. I've only got one lead. I got Obi-Wan Kenobi. And since I only have one lead, you know what that makes Obi-Wan Kenobi? Okay, so if I could have Obi-Wan Kenobi call me, we'll see what happens here. So Obi-Wan Kenobi's calling me. What you see is we bring that up right in Zoho CRM. You see who the person is. And then go ahead and hang up, since I'm not actually going to have a conversation with you. We have the ability here to enter notes. So based off of what happened in your call, you can enter notes there. This will go right into Zoho CRM. So you know when you had the phone call, you know what took place. And then down here also, if as a result of the call, you want to have maybe another call scheduled, you can go ahead and schedule that call right there while you're in Zoho CRM. Or you can schedule an event. Perhaps you're going to go out to lunch or something like that with them. Or you can set up a to-do list like, oh, I promised to send them out a brochure or something like that. This is interesting and this helps with flow. But because Jive and Zoho are actually co-developing, we're going to do a lot more cool stuff coming in the future. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So let me just give you an example. Do you have all your customers the same to you? No. Are some customers more important? What if in Zoho you could just identify some of your high-value customers, and instead of when they call the company, them getting sent to an IVR or to sales immediately, you go, well, you know what? I'm the owner of the business, and I have 5 customers that I want always to come to me. Well, with the integration we're doing with Zoho, we're creating something we call dynamic routing. And that is that you'll be able to identify characteristics about the customers in Zoho CRM that in Jive, using that dial planning that we talked about, you'll be able to now completely change their experience, such as immediately having them sent to you. Or maybe you say, oh, I might not be available, but I have 3 partners. So let's just, when this person calls, it always goes to a partner, and then it'll automatically go out to the 3, and the first one to pick up gets them. We can also do things like, this is a big sale that's coming, and change the way the call is routed that way. So there's a whole bunch of crazy cool stuff that we're working on that will now change the customer's experience instead of having to fight through. Now, you guys don't like it when you call in and you get the push the number thing, right? Nobody likes it. With dynamic routing, what'll happen is we will start to anticipate who the customer wants to talk to and get them straight to the customer, straight to their account rep or to a support rep or to billing. We could set it up so that if they haven't paid their bills for 3 months, they automatically always go to billing. In other words, no, we're not selling you any more crap until you pay for what you got. Well, that's where we're headed. It's really exciting stuff.